All right, and welcome back to Justin
and Leslie
in the Morning Sport Edition. All right, today we have a great show for you guys. We will be hearing from the University of Tennessee basketball coach, Cuonzo Martin, and his feelings on how his team did not make the NCAA tournament and what his team could have done to better their chances of making it.
Well, this year's a little bit different because I felt like we did the necessary work to be in the NCAA tournament. So that part is unfortunate.
So, Justin, what do you think about what Cuonzo said? Do you feel like the team did everything they possibly could have to make it into the tournament, and maybe, they did get the short end of the stick and should have made it in?
Well, I think that I would disagree with Cuonzo when he said that the team did everything they could. I think that when you look back at UT going into the SEC tournament, they had strong control of their chances of getting into the tournament. They were listed as the 4 teams on the bubble that could have made it into the tournament, and after their disappointing performance in the SEC tournament, they were the last 4 out. And so I think they had complete control of their fate, and if they had won some games in the in the SEC tournament, they could have sealed the deal for them making it into the tournament, really.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Ole Miss and Georgia, if they hadn't lost both games with both of them, if they would have had split wins with both of these teams, then they definitely would have been in the tournament.
Yeah, I think Cuonzo makes some good points when he says that their team did all they could. However, I would say that they missed out on a lot of opportunities to beat teams that honestly just really aren't that good. Like they lost to Georgia twice late in the season, and just some bad losses late in the season when they knew that they were a bubble team and that their chances weren't for sure to make it in the NCAA tournament. And down the stretch, they needed to play lights out to, like I said, seal their fate into the NCAA tournament, and they didn't. And they showed up poorly for the SEC tournament and just didn't play well and didn't show the selection committee, hey, we deserve to be in the tournament.
Well, not even just late in the tournament. It could have started from the beginning in the preseason when they were playing their out-of-conference schedule. Really, a vital game they should have won was against Georgetown, which they only lost by 1, and then against UVA. And if they would have beat both of those teams, along with maybe having split wins with Ole Miss and Georgia, like you were saying, they would have been a shoo-in for the tournament. They didn't win, so that's really what it comes down to. It's not, I guess, with the tournament this year, it's not about who you beat, it's about who you lost to. Because, MTSU and St. Mary's didn't have difficult schedules or really play anybody special, but they didn't lose to anybody significant either. And yeah, we beat Florida and Wichita and Mizzou, but we lost to Ole Miss and Georgia and Georgetown and UVA. So those were all very vital games that UT should have won if they wanted to make it into the tournament.
Yeah, and going back to what you said about it's about who you lost to. Well, it's about who they didn't win against. I can't see any big wins for this team besides a win over an injured Florida. A good win over Missouri, I'll give them that, but Missouri's not a powerhouse or like a number 1 seed or anything. So, you beat Missouri. That UT doesn't have very big wins to say, hey, we deserve to be in the tournament. They're on the bubble, and they played poorly at the beginning of the season and got hot late in the season. Jordan McRae went off and kind of led this team, jump-started them. And but then, when it came down towards the last couple of games in the SEC tournament when Tennessee was on the bubble, and they knew that, their chances of getting in the tournament were based on how they played, they didn't show up. And so how can we expect them to show up in the NCAA tournament when they didn't show up in the SEC tournament?
Right. And, Justin, going on with what you were saying early in the season, how they weren't really showing up to the games and not playing well, I feel like that might have had a lot to do with Maimon being injured and out those first couple weeks. It kind of seemed like the team was maybe relying on the fact that he would come back. And then, after that 2-week stretch in January where they were just losing game after game, I think they realized that Maimon wasn't going to come back and they needed to step up.
All right, now we're going to hear again from Coach Martin and his thoughts on how the SEC Conference maybe didn't get enough respect from the NCAA selection committee.
It's unfortunate. I would say a lack of respect more than anything. We got a second-place team at this level. It's almost like a mid-major mentality in this league when you got your second-place team that get in the NCAA tournament. This is a BCS league. It's one of the best leagues in America. That just shouldn't happen.
Okay, so we heard a little bit from Cuonzo, and one of his cases for Tennessee not making the tournament was that the SEC in general doesn't get enough respect from the NCAA committee. Now, Leslie, do you think that the SEC kind of is not as much of a respected conference as it is in football? In basketball, they get a little disrespected by the committee.
You know, maybe the SEC doesn't get so much respect from the NCAA committee because really the only other conference that had more teams in the RPI top 50 than the SEC was the Big Ten. And the SEC only has 3 teams playing in the tournament. That seems, a little slighted.
Well, Cuonzo talked about a little bit in his interview about how the SEC is not really in a down year. And I sort of agree with that, but I sort of don't, because you see the SEC in Florida is really the only top team that the SEC produced this year. They're number 3 seed in the tournament. And the other 2 teams that made the tournament, Ole Miss and Missouri, they're not powerhouses. And so those teams in themselves kind of a little bit squeaked their way into the tournament.
I think that really we'll have to see if Cuonzo and UT shows up for their NIT tournament coming up on Wednesday, and whether they really prove that they deserve to be in the NCAA tournament or not.